The silver BMW pulled into the near-empty parking lot just as the rain started to pour. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the windshield wipers fought to keep the view clear. Inside, a man in his late 40s sat silently, staring at the diner through the blur of raindrops. He was dressed sharply, too sharply for this side of town. His watch alone probably cost more than the diner's monthly rent. In the back seat, a boy, maybe 10 years old, with large eyes and a soft, distant smile, hummed a broken tune to himself while rocking back and forth. The man reached back, gently touched the boy's shoulder, and said, "We won't be long, Adam. Just a quick bite." The boy didn't respond, but stopped humming. The man sighed and got out, hurrying to open the door for his son. He pulled out a folded wheelchair and carefully helped the boy into it. Together, they entered the diner, its bell jingling as they stepped in. The place was quiet. A single waitress behind the counter looked up and offered a tired smile. She looked around 30, her hair tied back in a messy bun, uniform slightly faded. Her name tag read Maya. "Take any seat you like," she said. The man didn't speak. He wheeled Adam to a booth near the window and sat down across from him. The boy stared out the window, watching the rain like it was the first time he'd ever seen it. Maya came over with 2 menus. "Coffee for you?" she asked the man. He nodded, but said nothing. "And for your son?" "He doesn't speak," the man said. "But he'll have pancakes. No syrup. Just butter." She smiled kindly. "Got it." Maya disappeared into the kitchen. The man watched her go. Something about her seemed oddly familiar, but he couldn't place it. When she returned with the coffee, she set it down without a word. Then she bent down beside Adam, holding his small hand gently. "Hey there," she whispered. "You hungry?" Adam looked at her, blinked slowly, and then smiled. It was small, subtle, but the man saw it. He hadn't smiled in days. She brought the pancakes a few minutes later, along with a plastic fork. She noticed the man struggling to cut them into small pieces, trying to feed Adam, who wouldn't open his mouth. "Mind if I help?" she asked softly. The man raised an eyebrow. "He doesn't like being fed by strangers," he said. "He gets scared." "I'm good with kids," she said. "Sometimes they trust people they don't know more than the ones they do." He hesitated, then nodded. Maya knelt beside Adam and whispered something. Her voice was too low for the man to hear. But Adam turned to her, then opened his mouth. She gently fed him the first bite. He chewed slowly, then reached out and touched her arm. Gently, trustingly. The man stared. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Maya." "Do you have children?" She hesitated. "Not anymore." He noticed the change in her tone, the way her eyes flickered down. "I'm sorry," he said, unexpectedly sincere. She smiled, but didn't reply. "Do you work here full-time?" "Double shifts. 7 days a week." "Why?" "To survive," she said, her smile fading. "Doesn't everybody?" Adam laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes. The man turned and saw Maya tickling him lightly, then offering another piece of pancake. Adam was responding to her like she was magic. The man leaned forward, suddenly curious. "He doesn't even react like that with his therapists. Not even his mother." Maya glanced at him. Maybe it's not about the title. Maybe it's about the presence. He blinked. That struck him in a way he didn't expect. They finished breakfast quietly. Maya stayed close to Adam the whole time, occasionally talking to him, even though he never said a word back. Still, he never stopped smiling at her. When the check came, the man pulled out a thick wallet. Before he could pay, Maya shook her head. "It's on the house," she said. "I can afford it," he said flatly. "I know. But I want this one to be a gift." He studied her face. "Why?" She met his eyes. "Because I know what it's like to want to give your kid a good day, and not know how." He didn't respond. Outside, the rain had stopped. As the man wheeled Adam out, he glanced back. Maya was wiping the counter, humming softly. She looked tired, lonely, and yet peaceful. He drove off, but something kept tugging at him. He glanced at Adam through the mirror. The boy was still smiling. He hadn't seen that in weeks. Months even. Later that night, in his penthouse apartment overlooking the city, the man couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, then pulled out his phone. He called someone. Find everything you can about a woman named Maya. Works at a diner on 4th and Ridgeway. I want everything. Fast. The next morning, he received a file. Thin. Too thin. Maya Evans. Age 32. Widowed. Lost her only child, a 7-year-old boy named Lucas, in a fire 2 years ago. Since then, she'd lived alone. No family. No close friends. Just work and rent and quiet grief. The man stared at the photo of Lucas. He looked like Adam. Same eyes. Same soft expression. It hit him like a wave. He put the file down and made another call. I want to offer her a job. Something real. Life-changing. But when his assistant called back hours later, she sounded confused. She refused, she said. What? She said no. Didn't even ask the salary. He stared at the phone. The next morning, he went back to the diner. She was there, wiping tables. You turned down my offer, he said. She looked up at him, unbothered. It wasn't the right fit. You didn't even ask what it was. Didn't have to. He sat down. You lost your son. I didn't know. She didn't reply. I lost my wife, he said after a moment. Car accident. Adam was with her. He survived, but not without damage. Maya nodded slowly. Grief changes everything. He leaned in. Come work for me. Not in an office. I want you to help Adam. Be around him. Teach him. He smiled for you. That's rare. That's priceless. I'm not a therapist. I don't want one. I want you. She looked at him, long and hard. Why? She asked. He hesitated, then said, because you see him. Not his condition. You saw my son when even I forgot how to look. That silence again. Heavy. Meaningful. I don't want money, she said finally. I want purpose. He nodded. Then give him one too. She agreed. For weeks, she came to the penthouse. Every morning. She worked with Adam, talked to him, taught him how to feed himself again. Played music. Drew pictures. Slowly, the boy opened up. His eyes lit up more. He even began to hum songs she taught him. And one day, he said her name. Maya. The man heard it from the other room. He rushed in, stunned. Adam was laughing, reaching out to her. Maya was crying. The man stood there, frozen. The sound of his son's voice cracked something deep inside him. It was the first word Adam had said in years. He walked over, knelt beside his son, and touched his cheek. Adam looked at him and said, Dad. Just one word, but it echoed like thunder. Months passed. Maya became more than just a helper. She became part of the family. Adam was thriving. The man smiled again. He laughed again. And then one day, Maya didn't show up. No call. No message. He waited. Minutes turned to hours. By nightfall, panic set in. He called the diner. No answer. He called hospitals. Nothing. Then he remembered something from her file. The building she lived in. He rushed there himself. He banged on the door of her apartment. No response. Finally, he asked the building manager to open it. Inside, the place was dark. Empty. The lights flickered. A half-packed suitcase sat by the bed. And a note. He picked it up, heart pounding. It read, I wasn't supposed to stay this long. I just wanted to help. But I let myself feel again. That was my mistake. Don't look for me. He's yours to love, not mine to replace. The paper trembled in his hand. He stood there, stunned, until he realized something else. The note wasn't recent. It was dated 3 days ago. She had planned this. Planned to disappear. But why? Why walk away now? Unless someone forced her. He made another call. Pull up the security footage. Her building. The diner. Anywhere she's been the past week. And track her phone. I want to know everything. There was silence on the other end. Then his assistant said, there's something you should know. What? She was at the police station 3 days ago. He paused. Why? No idea. But she left fast. Looked shaken. After that, she vanished. He lowered the phone, the pieces swirling. What did Maya find out? Why run? And why did it feel like someone didn't want her to come back? He looked down at the note again. The last line now read like a warning. Don't look for me. But he would. He had to. Because Maya had saved his son. And now, it was his turn to save her. The apartment was cold, too quiet. He stood there with the note still trembling in his hand, his heart pounding harder with each second. It wasn't just the words that unsettled him. It was the absence in the air. Maya's energy, her warmth, the subtle joy she brought into his son's life. It had vanished. Gone like vapor. The room felt like a crime scene, not because there were signs of struggle, but because of what had been lost. It wasn't abandonment, it was evacuation. And something about that scared him far more. She hadn't just disappeared. She had run. From what, though? By the time he got back to his car, the city was dipped in darkness. Neon signs buzzed above cracked sidewalks. He didn't go home. He didn't even check in with Adam's nanny. Instead, he sat in his parked car, his mind playing images of Maya feeding his son, laughing with him, teaching him how to draw circles that turned into faces. He had watched her change his boy, not with therapy or medicine, but with presence. And now she was gone, without a trace, leaving only a cryptic message that seemed less like a farewell and more like a warning. He stared at the steering wheel, jaw clenched. No, he wasn't going to let this happen. Not again. Too many things in his life had been stolen. His wife, his peace, his son's laughter. Maya wasn't going to be next. He called his security team and told them to track every piece of footage around her building and the diner for the past week. It took hours, but around 3 a.m., one of them called back with a lead. "Sir, we've got something," the voice said, rushed. She left the diner on Tuesday night at 8:47 p.m. A man was waiting for her across the street. Tall, black coat stood out. She looked uncomfortable. He walked with her down the block. 15 minutes later, she came back alone. She looked shaken. Then she left again. That was the last time she was seen. He froze. "Get a screenshot of the man's face. Enhance it. Send it to me." Minutes later, his phone buzzed. He tapped on the image. The man in the photo was grainy, but the face was unmistakable. Richard Kane, an ex-partner. The kind you don't want to cross. The kind that disappears when legal heat rises and shows up when your guard is down. They had worked together during the early investment years, before the billions, before the press. Richard was brilliant, unhinged, and dangerous. And he had disappeared after a federal investigation into insider trading swept through half their former circle. But now he was here, standing outside the diner, speaking to Maya. He felt something drop in his gut like a stone. This wasn't random. Maya didn't just leave. She found something. Or someone found her. The next morning, he kept Adam home from school, sat with him, fed him slowly, played soft piano in the background like Maya used to do. But the boy was different, quiet again, withdrawn. The light in his eyes had dimmed. He kept pointing toward the door, whispering, "Maya." Over and over again. "I know, buddy," the man whispered, brushing Adam's hair back. "I know." Later that day, another call came in. One of his men had traced Maya's phone. It pinged once, 3 days ago, 2 counties over, then went dead. But nearby, at a rundown motel off Highway 19, the manager remembered a woman matching Maya's description. She had stayed for one night, paid in cash, and left before dawn. Alone. He drove there himself. The motel stank of mildew and cigarette ash. The room was sparse. Stained carpets. Peeling wallpaper. But on the desk was something strange. A child's drawing, left behind. A stick figure of a woman and a boy, holding hands under a sun. The boy had brown hair like Adam's. The woman's name was written below the drawing in shaky block letters. Maya. Why would she leave that? He flipped the paper over and noticed faint imprints of writing, like she had written something above it and tore the top page off. He held it up to the light. The imprint was faint, but legible. An address. Warehouse District. Pier 19. That night, he didn't wait. He gathered his team, 2 former intelligence operatives he kept on payroll for personal matters, and they drove together. No police. He didn't trust them. Not with someone like Kane involved. The warehouse district was mostly abandoned, long past its industrial heyday. Pier 19 sat at the edge, half rotted and shadowed under the moonlight. They parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot. As they neared the rusted structure, a light flickered on inside. Just one, a narrow beam through a broken window. He signaled for silence. One of his men slipped around the back. Another flanked the east wall. He pushed the door open. Inside, dust floated in thick patches, and the smell of oil and damp concrete clung to the air. Chains hung from the ceiling like skeletal vines. And then he heard it. A voice. Muffled. Faint. Behind a stack of crates. He moved slowly, quietly, heart hammering. And there she was. Maya. Tied to a chair. Mouth gagged. Bruised. And behind her stood Richard Kane. "Didn't think you'd come yourself," Kane said, stepping into view, holding a small pistol. "But then again, you always were the stubborn type." He didn't respond, just stared at Maya. She looked up at him, eyes wide, not afraid. Trusting. "You let her dig too deep," Kane said. "Do-gooders. Always sticking their noses where they don't belong. What do you want?" Kane smirked. "A chance to clean up old mistakes. You think no one saw you pull out when things got ugly? You left me holding the bag. And now you've built this little kingdom, with your luxury apartments and charity foundations. I had nothing to do with that raid." "Maybe," Kane said. "But your silence was convenient. And now this woman, this waitress, somehow connects dots you never expected anyone to connect." "She's innocent," he growled. "There's no such thing." Behind him, his man gave the signal, ready. "I didn't come here to debate," he said. "Let her go. You want revenge? Take it on me." Kane raised the gun. Tempting. But messy. "I'd rather just vanish." Again. Then chaos. The rear door burst open. Kane spun. Gun raised, but it was too late. A flash. A shot. The sound of shouts. In seconds, Kane was on the ground, bleeding, groaning, disarmed. Maya screamed behind the gag. He rushed her, untied her, pulled the cloth from her mouth. "You came," she whispered. "Of course I did." She broke into sobs and fell into his arms. Back at the penthouse, things were quieter. Adam ran to Maya the second she stepped in, throwing his arms around her. She held him tight, crying into his small shoulder. The man stood behind them, watching, feeling a lump rise in his throat. She had been gone for only days, but it felt like years. And now she was back, safe. Later, when Adam was asleep, they sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. "He found me after I left work," she said quietly. "Said he knew about you, about your past. Said you ruined his life. I didn't believe him, but then he showed me photos. Old documents. Bank transfers. It was a lot. You were going to tell me. I didn't want to make it worse. I just wanted to protect Adam. And you." He reached for her hand. Held it. "You already did." Silence settled again. But it was a different kind of quiet. Not the heavy, haunted silence from before, but the stillness that comes after a storm. A peace that hadn't been earned easily. She looked at him. "Why did you come for me?" "Because you saved my son. And because I couldn't lose you too." She blinked, eyes wet again. "I left so I wouldn't hurt you. You leaving was the hurt." They leaned into each other. A connection deepened not by romance, but by pain shared and survival earned. Whatever this was between them, it was real. And it wasn't over. She moved into the penthouse the next week. Not as an employee, but as family. Adam called her Maya every morning now, sometimes Mimi, a nickname that made her laugh. She cooked breakfast, taught him how to tie his shoes, and filled the home with a calm energy that felt like healing. But in the back of the man's mind, something still lingered. Kane had mentioned something. Photos. Bank transfers. Secrets he never thought anyone could access. If Kane found them, who else could? What else did Maya see that night? And most of all, who else was watching? Because some shadows don't fade. They just wait for the right moment to return. Weeks passed. Life settled into a strange rhythm, a fragile normalcy. The penthouse, once sterile and echoing with silence, now pulsed with a soft warmth. Adam's laughter was returning, quiet at first, like the trembling echo of a melody long forgotten, then louder, freer, as he chased Maya through the living room or curled next to her with picture books. The man watched this transformation quietly, his heart torn between awe and a nagging tension that refused to release its grip. He wanted to believe it was over, that Kane's takedown had closed that dark chapter. But deep inside, he knew better. Shadows don't die when the light comes in. They just slither into corners, waiting. He kept the file Kane had been carrying. It wasn't much, half-burned bank statements, old offshore account numbers linked to companies that had long since disappeared, and a single, grainy photo of a much younger Maya. She looked barely 20. She stood beside an older man, smiling uncomfortably, her eyes not quite meeting the camera. Something about the image disturbed him. The timestamp was from years before they met, and the background suggested it had been taken overseas. Thailand, maybe, or the Philippines. When he showed it to Maya, her face went pale, and she asked to be alone for a while. He didn't push, but the seed had been planted. One evening, as the city hummed beyond the glass walls of the penthouse, he found her on the balcony again. She sat with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, legs tucked beneath her, staring down at the lights below. He sat beside her, without speaking. She didn't look at him. "I know who the man in that photo is," she said at last, her voice almost drowned by the wind. His name was Marco Soldivar. He ran a network. Girls. Smuggling. Offshore laundering. I was never part of it directly, but I knew things. I was working as a cleaner at one of his hotels. One night I saw something I shouldn't have. A girl, young, bleeding, was dragged through the back hallway. I tried to help. They found out. I ran. Changed my name. I've been hiding ever since. He didn't speak. Just watched her face, tense, haunted. Richard Kane wasn't just trying to get revenge, she continued. He was cleaning up. Marco's network went quiet years ago, but Kane was always one of his money men. I recognized him from that night. I think Kane was tying loose ends. I wasn't just a waitress to him. I was a threat. The weight of her words settled in his chest like cement. He had underestimated Kane. He thought it had been about him. Old grudges, corporate betrayal. But this went deeper. Much deeper. He rubbed his jaw, staring out at the skyline. "You think someone else will come looking?" "I know they will," she whispered. "Marco's kind never forget." He nodded, already working through plans in his mind, security upgrades, firewalls, off-grid contingencies. But none of that stopped the gnawing dread. This wasn't just about protecting Maya. This was about protecting Adam too. And that changed everything. The next day, he made arrangements. A second home, off the radar, deep in the countryside, miles from the city. He told Maya it was just a vacation spot, a place to breathe. But she saw through it. She always did. They moved within the week. The estate was quiet, an old manor surrounded by woods, with tall iron gates and no neighbors for miles. Adam loved it immediately. He ran through the hallways like they were mazes, spent hours in the garden under Maya's watchful eye. But even there, the air felt different, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. One night, while walking the perimeter, he spotted something. A flash. A reflection. High in the trees, then gone. He stopped, scanned the area. Nothing moved. No wind. No animals. Just silence. But the hair on his arms stood straight up. He told himself it was paranoia, that he was seeing ghosts in shadows. But then, the next morning, Maya found a dead bird on the porch. Its wings were bent backward, unnaturally, deliberately. A message. They weren't alone. He doubled the security. Cameras, tripwires, even private patrols through the night. But the feeling of being watched never left. And then, things started happening. The landline rang once every night at the same time, 2:03 a.m. No caller ID. Just silence on the other end. Then, it would click off. At first, they ignored it. Then, they unplugged the phone. But it rang anyway. One night, Maya answered it. He found her standing in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, frozen. Her face was drained of all color. "What did they say?" he asked, grabbing her shoulders. She didn't speak. just handed him the phone. On the other end, a man's voice whispered, "She can't hide forever." Then silence. He called his team. They couldn't trace the call. It came from a ghost line, bounced through a network of VPNs across 3 continents. Whoever was reaching out was professional and close. They didn't sleep that night. Maya stayed with Adam in the nursery, locking the door. He sat outside, a pistol in hand, watching the hallway. That morning, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a USB stick and a note, "You should have let her go." He plugged it into a disconnected laptop. It contained a single video file, black and white surveillance footage. Grainy. A camera hidden in a stairwell. Maya was in it. She was younger, maybe 18. She was screaming. 2 men held her down. A third stood over her, his face partially obscured by shadow. But it wasn't the violence that froze him. It was the man in the background, watching from the shadows. It was him. He slammed the laptop shut. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. He didn't remember that moment. Didn't know how it was possible. But it was there. The angle, the timestamp, it placed him in the building at the time. One of Marco's old hotels. A networking event. He had attended briefly, had drinks, then left. But the implication was clear. They were framing him, or exposing him. And now Maya had seen it too. She didn't speak to him that day. She sat in the garden with Adam, quiet, distant. And he understood why. The image haunted her. Had he known? Had he looked away? Had he once been just another mask in that parade of silent monsters? He tried to explain that night. Told her everything. That he had no memory of the girl, of her, of anything that happened in that stairwell. That he'd only been there to meet investors. That he didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. But even as the words left his mouth, they felt empty. Because the truth wasn't about what he remembered. It was about what he ignored. "I wanted to believe you were different," she said, staring into his eyes. "But that night, your face, it wasn't confused. It was calm." "I didn't see you," he whispered. "I swear to God I didn't see you. But you were there." Silence stretched between them. That night he didn't sleep. He watched old files, records, tried to piece together the past. The deeper he dug, the more he realized how blind he had been. The money had flowed too easily. The connections were too convenient. Maybe he hadn't been evil, but he had been complicit. And now, it was all coming back like blood in the water. The next morning, Maya was gone again. No note this time. Just her necklace. Adam had made it from beads and yarn, left on his nightstand. He searched the estate, called every contact, but she had vanished without a trace. Adam cried for her for days. And the man, he broke. He didn't eat, didn't shave, didn't work. Just sat in the nursery, staring at the door, hoping she'd walk through it. That she'd forgive him. That somehow, the past wouldn't destroy what little they had built. Then, 1 week later, another package arrived. This one wasn't anonymous. It was from her. Inside was a photo. Maya holding a baby. A baby that wasn't Adam. The back read, "You never asked about the child I lost." His hands trembled. His heart dropped. He sat there reeling. Who was the child? What had she meant by lost? And why now? He flipped the photo over again, and this time, he noticed something in the corner. A number. A code. At first, he didn't understand it. Then it hit him. It was a vault number. From his own private bank. A vault he hadn't opened in over a decade. The moment he read the vault number, his pulse surged like a drumbeat in his ears. It wasn't just any vault. It was the one he'd opened in a rush of arrogance during the peak of his ambition. A place he thought he used to store rare artifacts, confidential agreements, and legacy documents he would someday pass to Adam. But deep down, he always knew it held more than that. Things he didn't want to remember, transactions he'd buried, pieces of a self he tried to erase. He left the estate before dawn, instructing his security team to keep Adam safe, and drove through the rain toward the heart of the city, the road slick and silent. As he stepped into the sterile corridors of the private bank, the scent of metal and cold marble clung to him like guilt. The vault opened with a hiss, revealing neatly stacked files, an old leather briefcase, and a small, dust-covered safe. He opened it slowly, and inside, beneath yellowed documents and a faded Polaroid, was a birth certificate. His eyes locked onto the name written there. Noah James Bennett. Mother, Maya Rivera. Father, unknown. His throat closed. Maya had a son before Adam, a son she had never told him about. But then he turned the page, and the shock nearly sent him to the floor. Paper clipped to the certificate was a doctor's report. Noah James Bennett, deceased. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Location, same hotel he had once visited for a networking event. A third document followed, an autopsy never submitted officially. At the bottom, a scribbled note, covered up by Saldivar's people. Mother's identity hidden. Witness threatened. Child died protecting her. He stared at the documents for a long time. The weight of the truth crushed him. He wasn't just part of the background noise in Maya's pain. He was a thread in the tapestry of her deepest wound. Whether knowingly or not, he had stood in the shadows while the world took everything from her. She hadn't disappeared because she feared being hunted. She left because she saw the ghost of her child's death in his eyes. When he returned to the estate, Maya was waiting. She stood beneath the archway, her face unreadable, the wind pulling at her coat. Adam ran into her arms as if she had never left. The man stepped forward slowly, every bone in his body aching with regret. She didn't speak, but he handed her the documents. She read them with trembling hands. Then, for the first time in weeks, their eyes met. "I didn't know," he whispered. "But that doesn't make it better. I failed you. I failed him." She nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. "But you didn't fail Adam, and that matters." The silence between them felt like a healing wound, not painless, but honest. She reached out, taking his hand, the scars of their past pressing between their palms. In that moment, they weren't billionaire and waitress, sinner and victim. They were just two broken people, holding the pieces together the best they could. As they walked back inside, Adam laughing ahead of them, the man looked at her one last time. "I'll spend the rest of my life protecting you," he said. Maya smiled bittersweet. "Then let's live it." And together, they closed the door behind them, not to forget the past, but to finally begin again.